Ghana, West Africa. My name is Tawiah. I'm here to present a review article titled "The New Paradigm of Corporate Finance: Ethics in Finance, ICTs, Finance Globalization, and Stakeholders' Responsibility." The article examines the relationships between corporate finance and financial markets. It explained that previously these two were thought to be incompatible. However, following an exciting article by one Markowitz in 1952, people started changing their minds and supported the idea that financial economics emanates from the blend of the two. The article therefore sought to exploit this idea and attempt to help organizations to use it to predict their future prospects. The article reviewed relevant literature which compared classical to actual approach of corporate finance. It was emphasized that the evolution and development of financial economy has tremendously changed from the 20th to the 21st century. As a strategy for shoring up understanding of the relationships between the two, some chronological analyses were developed to illustrate the scope of financial economics using financial theory. The illustration depicted the fact that mathematics and economics laced up with technological advancement helped in putting up theories for championing the cause of financial economics. Since classical or modern theories were highlighted, the classical approach noted that commencement of financial economics as an authorization discipline started in the United States of America in the 19th and early 20th century when the companies realized serious challenges with their liquidity. Various themes, according to the article, were developed to modify the economic situation relating to competitiveness with financial economics, establishing a financial structure in the company based on concepts considering profitability and risk. It also touched on relevance of debt policies in order to adapt to market requirements, focusing on the short-term and variable interest rates. The article also featured the financial function in corporate finance within the scope of classical to actual approach. These were captured in a table, and the classical approach to financial economics focuses on merger and takeovers, while the modern approach focuses on trade-off between debt and equity. The actual approach also centered on finding a trade-off between assets and liabilities, size, composition, and growth. On research methodology, the article mentioned the use of analytical synthetical method because only through the composition of the phenomenon in this variable and generalizing their assumptions could go a long way to become the knowledge of law. The writers went on to predict the future approach of corporate finance within the framework of the new financial paradigm. Here, the article indicated that various global crises since 1990 cannot be divorced from financial crisis. The writers mentioned agency theory as well as an important component in the study of finance stakeholder theory, and the lack of incorporation of ethics in finance were seen to have evolved as the main financial area concept necessary to keep events on the desired function. Ethics in finance was seen as the ability to strike a balance between being and should be. This makes it necessary to integrate finance ethics in corporate finance. On financial globalization, the article noted that it has really influenced the size of business organizational complexity as well as legal structures. ICT was also seen to have resulted in huge improvements in productivity growth and economic growth, at least at the firm level. Financial softwares are illustrative of how ICT has really changed the outlook of financial economics. The article concluded that various theories are necessary in assisting the corporate environment in taking decisions concerning financial management outlets, and the ICT has really enhanced the form of corporate finance, and this facilitated merger, acquisition, arrangements, and also ethics in finance has really helped in improving financial strategies of most modern day organizations. Under introduction, the article set out to describe the review to to describe and review financial theories that relate to classical, modern, and actual approach to corporate finance in terms of financial functions and its future approach. It describes the rudiments of financial theory and relates this corporate finance. In this introduction, the writers note that studies in financial economics have uncovered a sharp distance between financial market and corporate finance. The article noted that corporate finance represents the financial decisions that business managers ought to make in order to attain successful financial management strategies. Financial market, on the other hand, was presented as the happenings on the market where equity funds, long-term bonds, etc., can be secured for sound development of organizations. Corporate finance was also mentioned to be responsible for decisions that relate into corporate value with spillover effects on distribution and allocation of financial resources within the framework of corporate governance. This, according to Azofra in 2005 and Floris in 2008, gives credence to the importance gained by corporate finance in business valuation and its concomitants of value creation. Theories on financial market, in the opinion of the article, dwell on consumer choice and investment portfolios as well as pricing models, which often come under efficient market theories. The article unfolded the idea that until the 1950s, financial markets and corporate finance were thought to be unrelated. The advent of Markowitz in 1952, in his article Portfolio Selection on the Interaction Between Corporate Finance and Financial Markets, demonstrated in an uncertain term that the two were powerfully related. The interrelationship, the article explains, gave birth to the science and practice of financial economics. The factors influencing the financial development, such as ICT, financial globalization, specialization, and uncertainty, etc., has made it very difficult to predict financial outcome using well-known traditional theories, and as a result presents some positive things in the financial place. This explains why theory in 2006 supports the view that corporate finance has witnessed tremendous changes within the 21st century. The article noted that existing literature failed to establish the future direction of the connection between theories on corporate finance and then financial market, and herein lies the thrust of this article. The article's etiquette exercise examines the authority, accuracy, relevant, currency, and objective of the article. The review exercise, however, begins with summaries, rising the article, examine its structure prior to conduct, and then literature review on corporate finance and its ramification. On research methodology, the article commences with an abstract which spelled out the purpose of the paper, which centered on financial theory in corporate finance. It sought to review financial theories in terms of classical, modern, and actual. Sandwiched in between abstract and introduction were the keywords which included descriptive, ethics in finance, financial theory, corporate finance, international, and then stakeholders. The introduction somehow expanded the scope of the abstract and emphasized the fact that it is important to consider corporate finance as part of financial innovation facilitated by perspectives. The literature review segment examined from classical to actual approach of corporate finance. It noted in detail that financial models could be tested empirically, and this helped in creating value of companies, exploiting ethics in finance so as to understand and define the future of financial area. Again, on research methodology, mentioned analytical synthetical method as the strategy adopted to conduct the study. Attention was also directed towards predicting the future approach of corporate finance in the realms of new financial paradigm. Issues discussed here included ethics in finance, financial globalization, new information and communication technology, in finance as well as stakeholders' responsibility and corporate governance. The letter noted that the creation of value for stakeholders constitutes an important company objective which influences corporate finance. The summary and concluding remarks indicated that the article supported the motion that other theories such as agency theory may influence the corporate finance view, and for that matter, there is the need for further study in that direction. 4 out of the 16 pages article were devoted towards providing the list of references. In all, 76 citations were made. Under review of literature, the writers mentioned Beck and Demosi, 2013, that corporate finance is the area of finance dealing with the sources of funding and the capital structure of corporations and the actions that managers take to increase the value of the firm to shareholders, as well as the tools and analysis used to allocate financial resources. Work in 2014 also explains that the primary goal of corporate finance is to maximize or increase shareholders' value. Although it is in principle different from managerial finance, which studies the financial management of all firms rather than corporations alone, the main concepts in the study of corporate finance are applicable to the financial problems of all kinds of firms. The term corporate finance is also associated with investment banking. In most businesses, corporate finance focuses on raising money for various projects or ventures. Carl's et al. In 2007. Another literature which was reviewed by Aniti in 2008 stated that corporate finance is related to corporations and the financial decisions that are taken by corporations. There are several important concepts of corporate finance and several other financial tools that are behind all these corporate decisions. According to Tawiah in 2006, all these important concepts of corporate finance are used to manage financial risk. Other literatures to which the corporate sector is exposed. At the same time, these concepts are used to increase the profitability of the corporation. These important concepts of corporate finance can be used to identify, analyze, and solve the financial problems of almost every firm. The important concepts of corporate finance are used to make investment decisions for both long and short term. All the decisions that are related to capital investments are long-term decisions, and working capital management is termed as short-term decisions, McMillan in 2010. Another literature that was reviewed was by Lezer in 2010, which he argued that real options analysis is one of the important concepts of corporate finance. The real option analysis helps in evaluating the two options termed as call and put options. These evaluations are also very helpful in taking the long-term investment decisions or capital investment decisions. Again, another important concept they mentioned is related to corporate finance is cost-benefit analysis. The writers mentioned that this concept is used to determine total input in a project and the results from that project. Through this concept, the corporation can identify the options where the investment or their investment can be done. The pictorial presentation, notably the table of characteristics of financial function from classical to actual approach, does a pretty good job in distinguishing clearly the three theories for nurturing and nourishing the subject content of corporate finance. The article can therefore be said to be generally accurate. Corporate finance issues in contemporary times features materials like merger and acquisition, which are used in strategies for growth and development. In Ghana, that's West Africa, when the central bank made it mandatory for existing commercial banks to step up their operating capital to a minimum of 60 million cedis, that is approximately 20 million US dollars. Players in the industry which could not meet the new capital level embarked upon mergers and acquisition in order to stay in business. Recently, the ceiling has been increased to 400 million. That is also approximately $90 million. So there will be more mergers and more acquisitions in future, or takeovers in future. The knowledge of ethics in finance, theories in financial function of corporate finance are therefore necessary in such situations to guide the corporate sector. Consultants often called upon to help with such business integrations need to refresh their memory of recent trends in such business finance. As I mentioned earlier, that they've just been given another ceiling of 400 million Ghana cedis. And it means that the consultants will need these models, and such powerful articles become indispensable in capacity building exercise. The article therefore is therefore very relevant for both the academia and the corporate sector, the public and corporate sector. The article was published during the first quarter of 2013 and therefore virtually 3 years old, or getting to 4 years old. An analysis of 74 references also shows that close to 75% relate to the period within 10 years of publishing the article. The currency of the reference also added value to the currency of the article itself. Globally, business are shifting productivity base owing to advantages of outsourcing to reduce operating costs so as to remain competitive in their pricing. And Ghana is one of the examples. Even the public sector is shifting from employing people because of the ban on employment to outsourcing, especially with the technical fields. Various forms of corporate finance structures are being arranged to enhance the globalization agenda. The article therefore acts as one of the reference points where modern ideas could be solicited to perpetuate the corporate finance agendas of most contemporary organizations. The 3-year or 4-year pertinent article is therefore very current. Generally, the research methodology gives a fair idea whether an article is objective or not. The authors indicated that they broke down existing pieces of information as by way of analysis and rebuilt them by way of synthesis to arrive at the various conclusions. The synthetic analytical method was used because some existing phenomena had to be broken down into their basic variables prior to generalizing the assumptions to constitute the knowledge into ideas worth sharing with both the academic and corporate world. It is difficult to assess how the pieces of information analyzed, that is broken down, were not affected by the personal sentiments of the 5 scholars. It is from this background that one cannot fairly attest to the objectivity of the article. Perhaps one should quickly add, however, that the accuracy of the extensive references makes the findings of the article worth generalizing anyway. Taking recognizance of the fact that corporate environment is really taking advantage of corporate finance strategies to implement their export drive in recent periods, it stands to reason that any literature material which attempts to promote this business trend should be able to help stakeholders to move into the foreseeable future. A stable article is one that should be fruitful enough to serve mankind for a relatively long period. Looking at the quality of the authors and the fact that it was published only 3 to 4 years ago means the article is fairly stable. The article featured one table and another figure. Figure 1 displayed the disintegration of information related to financial theories, evolution from classical to future approach. It featured information from 1900, that is the classical stage, and ended in 1950. It continued with the modern approach, started from 1950 and terminated at 1970. The third stage, that is actual approach, ends in 1997. The future extended beyond 2013. Various theories were featured at respective stages for the analysis process and subsequent synthesis. Table 1 was devoted towards illustrating the characteristics of financial function from classical to actual. The table also presented a fair idea of distinctive features of the various classifications. One can therefore conclude that the table and figure played their role as expected. In conclusion, the author's work was well and clearly laid out. Besides the objective of the article, which did not come out properly, it can safely be concluded that the
Thank you,
authority,
Ms.
accuracy,
Tawiah. Thank you for your wonderful
relevance,
presentation.
currency,
It was really
stability
a long
of the
presentation,
article cannot be
Tawiah.
in